immense pleasure to welcome our patron, Honorable Sri P.M. Rao Sir, Chairman, Vidya Vikas Education Society. We are honored you to be here, sir. Your presence is a great source of motivation to all of us. You are always an inspiration to all of us. Once again, I welcome you in this webinar. I welcome Dr. Vinay Rao Sir, Secretary, Vidya Vikas Education Society, who is an energetic and multi-dynamic personality. Your presence as a great source of motivation to all of us, as well as your presence is over here in this webinar is a motivation to not only us as well as to all the participants. Today we have an eminent personality as a resource person for today's webinar, Honorable Professor M.V. Ashok, retired Chief General Manager, NABARD, that is National Bank for Agricultural and Rural Development. Sir, very eagerly we are waiting to hear your experience. Sir, I again welcome you from the bottom of our heart in this webinar. I welcome our principal, Dr. R.K. Patra, sir, who is always with us at all circumstances and encourages us to conduct various programs. Sir also encourages to accept the challenges and support us. Thank you, sir. Once again, I welcome in this webinar. We have two important personalities who are behind every successful program. They are none other than our vice principals, Sri Sajiv Matthew sir and Sri Vinayak Mule sir. I welcome both of them in this webinar. I also pleased to invite all the dignitaries, participants, parents, teachers and students who are from all over the India. It's our tradition to begin the session with national anthem and followed by the university song. For that, may I request librarian Kulkarni sir to play national anthem and university song. Kulkarni sir, please.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे मंदिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् इदं सुन्दरं मन्दिरं शारदाया मुम्बापुरी विश्वविद्यालयम् कला शास्त्र वाणिज्य शाखाधिरूढा अमूढा विमुक्ता विहङ्गा वयम् शृण्वन्तु
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to present a small introduction about our institution and college. Ladies and gentlemen, Vidya Vikas Education Society, Vikhroli East, was established by the visionary academician Honorable Sri P.M. Rao sir and late Mrs. Vidya P. Rao madam. Both are the recipients of the National Award for the Teachers, along with the late Dr. W. S. Matkar and late trade union leader Dr. Datta Saman in 1962, with an objective of catering to the educational needs of the underprivileged sections of the society in the suburb of Mumbai. Today, the institution has near about 20 branches offering educational facilities in Mumbai, Thane, and Sindhudurg districts. Vikas College, one of the branches, was established in 1986 with an objective of offering higher education to the working classes and the underprivileged classes in the central suburb of Mumbai. Since then, the college never looked back, and presently we offer more than 20 UG and PG conventional as well as professional and vocational degree courses which are affiliated to University of Mumbai. I am very proud to say that now our college is also a PhD center in the subject of commerce. Now I would like to give a small introduction about the NGO, non-government organizations, for the understanding of students and the parents. NGO is a non-profit organization that performs selfless social service at local level, national level, and international level. Generally, NGOs work on specific issues or problems on environmental, education, health, and human rights. So nowadays, NGOs play an important role in the developing society, creating awareness as well as enhance the communities. To enlighten the gathering about the role of NGOs in socio-economic and political development in India, we have Honorable Professor M. V. Ashok, retired Chief General Manager, NABARD. So for that, may I request Sri Anand Nithure, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, to introduce our resource person, Honorable M. V. Ashok. Nithure sir, please.
Thank you very much, madam, for giving me an opportunity to introduce such an eminent personality in today's webinar on the role of NGOs in socio-economic and political development in India. Professor M. V. Ashok, an agri-business professional, retired as a Chief General Manager of National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development Head Office, Mumbai, on 31st July 2017, after 37 years of development banking service, having been with the Reserve Bank of India and Canara Bank. Currently, he holds the position of adjunct professor for School of Agribusiness Management, MIT World Peace University, Pune, and as a visiting professor at College of Postgraduate Studies, Shillong, with the Central Agriculture University Northeast, beside being an advisor to Aditya Birla Group, as well as Dr. Reddy Foundation and several NGOs and APOs promoted by them, and a mentor to what 6 agri startup. A postgraduate in agriculture, Mr. Ashok is from the 1980s batch of Indian Agriculture Research Institutions, New Delhi, after a bachelor degree in agriculture from the Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, Coimbatore, 1978 batch. with additional qualification in general management, human resource development, and training and development. He has also done a special course on agri-business management from Cornell University, USA, as well as on financing micro enterprise from the Institute of Development Studies, University of Reading, UK. Mr. Ashok has considerable exposure in NABARD to collective farming model, beginning with the Farmer Club scheme from 1985 onward to the introduction of the Farmer Producer Organization model from its inception from the late 1990s. He has been studying the subject of agriculture marketing for the last 1 decade and learning from the experiences from Farmer Producer Organization. He has been associated with Mr. Ashok, has had exposure of rural finance and agribusiness sector in several countries, including Thailand, Kenya, China, Germany, USA, Finland, and England. So with this brief introduction, I will hand over the session to the Ms. Madam. Please proceed further. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, sir, for giving a brief introduction about our resource person. It is my humble request to all the participants to please post your questions in the WhatsApp group during the session instead of chat box. Our coordinator will ask the question on behalf of the participants. Now, may I request our resource person, Honorable Professor M.V. Ashok sir, to take over the session. Sir, please.
Okay, madam. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
And thank you very much, Anand Saab, for having given this wonderful introduction about myself. I don't know whether I'm deserving most of them, but nevertheless, it is a pleasure to be here today at the invitation of the Vikas College. And when I got the invitation, I was really overjoyed because this is perhaps the first time I'm coming to this particular college, although there were several other colleges which I have visited in Bombay. Yes, I was with the MIT World Peace University for a short-term assignment, which got over by the 31st of May, and subsequent to 31st of May, from 1st of June, I have relinquished that post, and I'm now trying to take up other assignments which are in tune with my own expertise. I have been associated with NGOs almost throughout the life of my career in NABARD for the last 35 years. So I think it will be a good opportunity for me to share a lot of information based on my experience over the last 35 years. So with these few words, let me begin my small short presentation on the role of NGOs in socio-economic and political development of India. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So before we come to what is NGOs and all that, I think we need to understand what is the social and economic political development at all in the first place, about which we are trying to see how NGOs fit into this kind of a sector. Now, although there are several definitions of this particular feature, one definition which was propounded by Amartya Sen in 1999 has been very popular, and he describes human capabilities as a bundle of freedom, and he tries to distinguish 5 types of freedoms which are being taken up by NGOs in their work, which Vince Madam also mentioned a few minutes ago. One is about political freedom, about economic activities, about social opportunities, about transparency guarantee, and about protective security. I think I'll come to it a little later by explaining each one of them in due course. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, what is development at all? When we are talking of political and social economic development, let us understand what exactly we mean by development in the first place and then go to this extent. So, one is about the improvement from primary to advanced stages. So, when you talk of development, it means you're going from one stage to another in terms of the development which happens over a period of time. Systematic use of scientific and technical knowledge to meet specific objectives which go to help the people, the rural people and the urban people in terms of their livelihood, in terms of their living and being. Acceleration of the process of economic and social transformation, which is based on cultural and environmental factors and their interaction. You will understand this if you travel across the country. I do not know how many of you have had that kind of an opportunity. At least having been in Nabad, I had the opportunity to work in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, in UP, in Jharkhand and Maharashtra also. Now, with the result, I've been able to understand what exactly distinguishes one state from the other and how we have to look at development process itself. Now, adding improvement of life of common man would mean several things. One is economic and social reforms. Another is sanitation. Third is health. Fourth is drainage system, which is very important. Roads and other utilities. So Vince Madam did make a mention that how NGOs try to concentrate on certain activities which come under these. And the reason being that when an NGO starts focusing on one activity, they try to develop expertise in that particular activity, and they don't want to take up other activities because if that happens, then they will be fretting away their own expertise. Yes, next slide, please. Yeah. So when we talk of development, when you talk of social development, there are three important things that we have to keep in mind. One is poverty eradication, which is very, very important for a country like India. Then employment generation, which is another major sector which requires attention by both the government organizations and the non-governmental organizations. And then social harmony at the rural level as well as the urban level. So these are three important things that we need to keep in mind when we are talking of social development. Yes, next slide, please. So normally, it is the responsibility of the government to address the requirements of all these things. One is about basic education. So you have primary schools, you have middle schools, you have secondary schools, you have higher schools, and so on. But they are all supposed to be for basic education. And beyond that, if they want to do a little more, then they need to spend more and then go in for higher education. Primary healthcare, you have primary healthcare centers in the rural areas, and of late, ever since coronavirus became such an important aspect in our lives, the primary healthcare has taken a very big importance in our lives. And about this is as far as human healthcare is concerned. But then you have another set of things which go for livestock healthcare, like veterinary care. So you have a lot of things which help the farmers which help the rural people in helping their livestock. The livestock could be cows, buffaloes, goats, poultry, and so on. So all these things also require veterinary care, which is the responsibility of the government in most cases. I'll come to it later about how and why they are unable to do it. Then we talk of livelihood empowerment. See, livelihood empowerment is one of the most major things which we look at in the rural setup. And what happens is that in the rural areas, the livelihood empowerment, although it is the responsibility of the government, they are unable to give full support in terms of not only the livelihood but also the marketing of the products that are manufactured by the people. Infrastructure development. Now, this is a major responsibility of the state government, and normally NGOs don't get into this area at all because infrastructure development involves a lot of investment, which the NGOs will not be able to do it, and it is the responsibility of the government to take up infrastructure, laying of roads, bridges, and construction of schools, construction of primary health centers. All this forms a part of the infrastructure. Then you have governance, normal governance, which is taken up by the district administration. You have a range of people who look at the governance, starting from the district collector. Then you have a lot of people at the taluk level, at the block level, and so on. Of course, they are unable to meet all the requirements, but at least you have a semblance of a system which is in place. Women and child development is another major thing which is the responsibility of the government, but many NGOs get involved in this because it's much easier to get involved and help the women and children for various things. And then women empowerment. When you talk of women empowerment, they talk of skilling of the women in terms of helping them with certain skills which will help them in their own livelihood. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these are some of the key concepts associated with social development, which I wanted to highlight about capabilities. So for all citizens, the people that should have required economic, social, and political freedom to lead the type of life they have to reason to value. And these should also result in having a decent life for the people and capabilities such as being adequately nourished, that is, you're talking of nutrition. So nutrition is one of the major areas which many of the NGOs also look at, and they're able to do it also. Education, basic education, which the government does. And apart from that, there are several NGOs which take up education by helping the government in trying to address this particular problem. And able to avoid common preventable illness with primary health centers, which we are aware of. Maybe we do not have that many number that we actually require, but the fact remains that these are the key concepts associated with social development, which is being taken up by the NGOs, by the government departments, by the government. I'm not talking of the NGOs as of now. Now we go on to NGOs. Yes, please. Next slide. So what are non-governmental organizations? Now, normally, non-governmental organizations are supposed to be voluntary organizations, meaning people come together on a voluntary basis. Nobody forces people to join an NGO. They join on their own because of their interest in that particular activity or in the particular organization. Democratic and open to all those wishing to become members of the organization voluntarily and serve the society. That is very clear on that. Therefore, they have assumed a significant space in civil society which is fast emerging today due to the weakening of the state. So this is a major trend which has been happening. See, currently in India, we have something like around 1 lakh NGOs. I'm talking of registered NGOs because there are many unregistered NGOs also. So when we talk of registered NGOs, there are almost about 1 lakh of them. And out of them, almost 10,000 of them are being supported by NABARD in various ways. I will come to that later. These NGOs are popularly known as because they are free from governmental control in their functioning. So this is the major thing that we have to understand, that when you're talking of a government organization and a non-government organization, in the case of NGOs, they are free from the government regulations. And NGO is a popular term which has gained currency at global level and commands respect in society due to its welfare activities in the society. So they have a lot of respect in the society, in the rural society also, as well as in the urban society. So you have NGOs which are operating in both the spaces, both in the rural areas as well as in the urban areas. And the organization does not seek financial assistance from the government, but it operates on its own principles and programs. So in many cases, what happens is the government may fund them. That's a different thing, but they don't look up or they don't wait for the funds in order to start their operations. Yes, next slide, please. So this is about the differences between government organizations and NGOs, which are the government organizations are established by the government naturally, but NGOs are established by private individuals. Government agency is a permanent organization in the machinery of the government responsible for administration. An NGO is an organization that is neither a part of the government nor a conventional not-for-profit business. I would like to make a small mention. This madam was mentioning that the NGOs are not for-profit organizations. The fact remains that many NGOs do make profits, but these profits are not taken out of the organization. They are plowed back and they are used in the activities of the same organization. So that small distinction is there between for-profit and non-profit. That will come to it a little later. And many NGOs work under the government administration to achieve government objectives. So the government itself is unable to fulfill many of the obligations that they have, and therefore they take the help of the NGOs in order to run their own administration also in terms of its activities. Yeah, next slide, please. Now we have to understand, why do we need NGOs at all in the first place? So first thing is, we must understand that there are gaps in the developmental process which requires the involvement of other organizations other than the government. Then ignorance of the rural communities do not know much about the government schemes or what are the eligibilities of themselves. So this is where the NGO come into picture by trying to give them some information and trying to help them with that kind of a service. Lack of willingness to change. Nobody likes to change. I don't like to change. You don't like to change. But the fact remains that when it comes to change, when it comes to development, this change is a very important aspect in the process. And in order to make people understand, the rural people understand why they should change, it is essential for these NGOs to come into picture and make them understand. The government people cannot do it. Lack of awareness of various aspects of the development process. Can I go back to the earlier slide, please? Yeah. reluctance to change. I was telling you about that, and the non-availability of services. See, what happens is in a country like India, which has got about 1.4 billion people, it is not possible for the government to reach each and every citizen of the country. And this is where the NGOs come into picture, and they help the government in trying to do the last mile delivery. Yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? So this is about the history. I don't want to go much into it, but nevertheless, you must understand that India has got a very rich history as far as NGOs are concerned. Because right from the 1900s, the NGOs have been operating, and most of them were from the Gandhian times. And many of the NGOs even today have got some aspects which they have taken from the Gandhian culture. So I don't want to go much into it, except to tell you that India has got a very rich history as far as NGOs are concerned, unlike many other countries in the world. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is about a little more on the history, where it says about the numerous organizations which were established during this period of the 19th century. So you have organizations like the Friend in Need Society of 1858, the Pratana Samaj 1864, Shodhan Samaj of 1873, Arya Samaj 1875, National Council for Women in India 1875, Indian National Conference of 1887. I think many of us would not have heard of many of these so-called NGOs at all, except one or two like Arya Samaj and all that. But the fact remains that all these NGOs have been the funds which have given rise to various NGOs across the country in terms of the thematic subjects on which they are working on. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is about the importance of NGOs in India. Now, due to the limitation to the government, which I was telling you about, NGOs play a major role in social development, especially because they are unable to reach the last line, the last delivery, and also because we've got a huge country, a huge rural area to be covered. And India as a nation has a large vulnerable population in terms of health, security, education, employment, and opportunities. And out of this, health has taken a lot of importance during the last 1 year, 1.5 years, as you all are aware of. It is not possible for the government to serve each and every corner of the system, which is a fact. And this is where many of the NGOs come into picture, and they lack the last mile delivery. I'm talking of the government organizations lack that possibility, and this is where the NGOs help. And that is why NGOs help is essential for the government. Next slide, please. Now, I was telling you that in India, there are almost about 1 lakh NGOs which are registered, meaning there are many unregistered ones also. So if you're looking at registration, because registration is essential in order to let people who are funders who understand what is the legal entity of an organization before they actually fund them. Societies can be registered under the Societies Registration Act of 1860, or it could be under the Trust Act of 1882, or it could be the Cooperative Societies Act under the State Cooperative Societies Act 1912, or the company under the Companies Act. The NGOs can be registered under Companies Act also, which is actually, there is a separate provision called Section 8 company, where the profits are not taken out. So such organizations are also there under the Companies Act, and of late, many of the NGOs are registering themselves under the Companies Act under the Section 8. Next one, please. So this is about how NGOs are funded. So NGOs need fund. Otherwise, how are they going to pay for the salaries of the people that they have? Now, one source of the fund is the membership which the people give them. The second thing is private donations which they get. Third is about sale of goods and services which the people of that particular sector do. And then you have grants. The grants may be from various sources, including the government funding and other organizations like CSR funding, other organizations like NABARD. NABARD gives almost about 1,000 crores every year in the form of funding to NGOs for various purposes. It could be for watershed development purpose. It could be for women empowerment purpose. It could be for self-help group purpose. It could be for formation of farmer producer organizations and so on. So these funding is available from these various sources, which help the NGOs in operating their projects. Yeah, next slide, please. Now here, I would like to refer to what Vince Madam had mentioned about the profit and non-profit. So there are two major forms of NGOs. One is most of them are non-profit organizations, but there are profit-making organizations, but these profit-making organizations do not take the profit out of the NGO outside. So they try to make use of it in the operations of the NGO itself and help the activities of the NGO. Yeah. Now these are about the categories of NGOs. There are various categories of NGOs. You can call them operational NGOs, which actually do work, whose primary purpose is the design and implementation of development related projects. And advocacy NGOs. Advocacy NGOs they only give advice. They try to help people with giving them advice as to what they should do, how they should go about and all that. And then you have humanitarian NGOs whose primary purpose is to provide aid in disaster areas, alleviate suffering from poverty and disease, etc. So Red Cross is one such organization, and Kerala has seen a lot of such organizations because disaster management has been one of the major problems for Kerala, especially when the rains come. Next, please. Then if you look at the categorization, it could be by orientation or it could be by level of operation. So if you talk of orientation, it can be a charitable orientation, or it can be a service orientation, or it can be a participatory orientation, or it can be empowering orientation. But when you talk of level of operation, now here it could be community-based organizations, or it could be city-based organizations, city-wide, and it could also be national NGOs. There are several organizations which are, national NGOs which are operating in several states. And then you have international NGOs which like Bill and Gates Foundation. It's just one of them. So similarly, you have international NGOs. So they are also there operating in the space. Next one. Now they go into a variety of roles like social welfare, mediatory role, consultative role, development and operation of infrastructure. So they don't do infrastructure as such, but they may undertake the maintenance of it and undertake that kind of activity. Supporting innovation, demonstration and pilot projects, facilitating communication, technical assistance and training, research, monitoring and evaluation. These are some of the other types of roles that NGOs take in terms of their activities. Next one, please. So this is about the other roles which they take up, where NGOs are active to promote education, which Vince Madam was mentioning. Yes, many NGOs are there in the field of education, especially for girls' child education and so on, where the government also is able to give a lot of funds. And women and child have been one of the major areas of concern for NGOs in terms of the activities that they take up. So most of them have been indicated here. I've just indicated a few of them, which give you an idea what are the types of things which the NGOs do as far as women and children are concerned. Yeah, next please. Then if you look at the major sectors of activity, human rights is one of the major sectors where they try to make people understand what are their rights, how to go about. Then about environmental clarity, how they should keep their environment clean and what they should do for that. Then about health. There are many health related NGOs these days because they find that the government is unable to come to the rescue of the people. Then poverty eradication, of course, I don't have to say any much. Rehabilitation and employment. So these are some of the other areas, major sectors of activity of NGOs in the country. I'm talking of only India. Next, please. So these are the target of the NGOs. What are the areas again, like community health promotion, education, emerging health crisis. This has taken a lot of importance during the last 1.5 years. Community social problems like juvenile crimes, runaway, street children, prostitution, environmental problems like sustainable water and energy resources, economic microloans, skills training, financial education and consulting, mostly for women, and development of schools and infrastructure construction, women's social and women's education, counseling, literacy issue are also some of the other targeted areas of NGOs. Yeah. Next, please. Can we go to the next slide? Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, 1 second. So these are about advantages and disadvantages of having NGOs. So all said and done, although NGOs seem to be good, but they do have a lot of advantages, but at the same time, they do have a few disadvantages also. So I just try to highlight some of the advantages that can go, like it can go places and undertake missions in areas where government cannot go. In most cases, that is the case where governments are unable to go into very far off places, but the government, the NGOs, especially the missionary NGOs, they do take a lot of effort in going to those places. Then they are more cost effective than the government because they don't believe in wasting money, and strong grassroots links, a more human face, field-based development expertise, ability to innovate and adapt, participatory and methodology tools, long-term commitment and emphasis on sustainability, less pressure from change in politics, small-scale projects, and can be individually tailored to meet specific community needs. Higher success rates are seen in the case of NGO projects, and less bureaucratic, and these are the advantages. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these are the disadvantages or limitations of NGOs, like limited financial and management expertise. They may not be able to afford that kind of professional people for this kind of activity, but some of them do. So this could be one limitation: limited institutional capacity, low level of self-sustainability, isolation, lack of organizational communication and or coordination, small scale intervention because most of them are based in small areas, and lack of understanding of the broader socio and economic context, and possible lack of legitimacy and difficult to regulate, and it can lack transparency and accountability. So many of the people who give the funds, they ensure that they have the transparency, they have accounting procedure, and then only they give money. Yeah, next please. So this, in short, is about the various facets of the NGOs, which I have seen, which are important from our point of view to understand as to how they help in the socio-economic development of the rural areas and the urban areas. So, in short, I personally feel that the NGOs are the most potential forms of development sources in the rural areas, especially the rural areas. Because urban areas, you have a lot of people who know what is to be done, whereas in rural areas, that's not the case. So, and in the case of NABARD also, NABARD gives the grants only to those NGOs which are operating in the rural area, because the NABARD also thinks of focuses on only rural development, not urban development. So with these few words, I'd like to bring to a close the session on what I was talking to you about. And in case there are any questions which I can answer, I'll try to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So from your presentation, we understand that NGO also playing an important role in inclusive growth in India.
Very much, very much, very much.
And your presentation was very nice, sir. And many things we came to know through your presentation. That means simply many people, we know that NGO is an organization, that's all. And beyond that, there are many things are there under the NGO which promote the economic growth of the rural area, I think. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think we will go ahead and take some time for question answer now. Just a reminder to all the participants, please be sure to type your questions into WhatsApp group, which are open now to the participants.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. One of the questions from TYBS students.
Okay.
You want some answer on NGO raise fund from outside the country.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
It is possible, no? Only thing is, it needs what is known as an FCRA. That is a foreign currency. There is a regulation under which they need to have the approval of the government of India of a foreign currency account. Then only they will be able to raise fund from outside.
Okay, sir. One question from second year arts faculty.
Okay.
Is there any village or region especially adopted by NGOs for development purpose?
What is that question, sir? I didn't understand.
Is there any village or region especially adopted by NGOs for development purpose?
See, normally NGOs, when they start their work, they do it only on the basis of an adoption of a village. Now, I cannot say which is the village right now, because you have 6 lakh villages in the country, and not all the 6 lakh villages have been adopted. But what happens is NGOs try to adopt whatever villages they are operating in that area, and then they start working on them. And therefore, NABARD had come out with a scheme called Village Adoption Scheme, and under which the grants were being given to NGOs to take up village adoption in that particular village. And right now it is not in operation, but there was a time when it was very popular. And even now, NGOs do take it up on their own and they do this village adoption scheme. Yes, they do. And even in the case of your own organization, in case you want to take up the adoption of any particular village, I think it can be done and I can help you in that also. Not a problem.
Okay, sir. One of the participants from Bulandshahr, you want to ask, what is the main source of funding to any NGO?
The main source is grants from the government and other organizations like NABARD and other CSR organizations. So because membership and all that is a very small amount and it will not be sufficient anywhere. So main sources are grants from the government and other sources like NABARD and CSR funds. So CSR funds for the last 3-4 years now, it has become very popular because the government of India has come out with a rule that every profit-making organization, company should spend at least 2% of its profits in welfare-related activities, which are supposed to be the CSR activities. And they have given about 33 activities which can be taken up for this kind of activity. And many of the NGO, many of the corporates, they have the CSR funds which help the NGOs which are operating in their area. For instance, if the corporate body has got a factory, now within the nearby area of that factory, there may be some villages where an NGO is already working. So they try to identify that NGO and then start giving the funds to that NGO under the CSR arrangement. Yeah.
Okay, sir. What are the main schemes provided for women entrepreneur to establish a firm? How one can contribute for economic development along with one's developments?
Yeah. So what happens is in the case of women, now most of these women, they need some type of activity which can't be a full-time activity. But at the same time, if they can take it up as a sort of a part-time activity and get some money out of it, then it's useful, number one. Number two, like one of the major sources of this kind of activity is solar drying. So what they do is in rural areas, you find a lot of agricultural produce which is going waste also sometimes. So in such cases, the NGOs have come up with a scheme wherein they use solar dryers in order to help the women in trying to produce solar dried vegetables mainly and fruits. And this is being sold by certain organizations on a branding. So they don't have any problem about that. So this is very common in many areas, especially where they use the solar drying system.
Okay, sir. One of the participants from Andhra Pradesh want to ask, what are sources there for giving all aspects of social or community services from NGO?
What is that question, sir? Please repeat.
What are sources there for giving all aspects of social services from NGO?
See, what happens is if the organization wants to take up any particular type of activity, see, normally you need professionals. And in order to have professionals, you need to pay the money. So unless they have a project where they can pay the money to these professionals, then in such cases, they have people who are able to give this kind of service also, social service. Like there are from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, there are some 3 or 4 schools from where a lot of people join NGOs in order to help them in their activity. So such people are able to give that kind of an support to the NGOs and by means of professional service. Yeah.
Darshan Joshi from TYBCom. He want to ask, is there any career option under NGO?
Plenty, plenty. As a matter of fact, these days it is a lot of potential has been seen in the. I myself am associated with a couple of NGOs in terms of helping them in trying to raise people who could join them. So I try to link people who are having that kind of a expertise to such organizations so that it helps them both ways. So career wise, I don't see any problem at all. And there is a lot of, only thing is they may not know which are the organization and how to apply. So this is where people like us can help organizations like you, the colleges, in trying to link your students with that kind of organizations.
Okay, one more question. Is it necessary to have MSW to work under NGO?
Normally, no, it's not necessary. But if you have an MSW, then it is always better because the people who are going to be funders, who are going to give funds, will always look at an organization whether it has got that kind of professional people or not. So if you have people with MSW, then they look at it with a little more respect. That's about all. But otherwise, if you look at it very sincerely, it is not essential to have MSW, but it is always better to look at MSW also because it helps the organization in a big way.
Okay, sir. Is there any particular programs in NABARD from rural development point of view?
But what is the question? I don't understand. Because
Is
all
there any
the projects
particular
that NABARD does
programs
are
in
meant for
NABARD
rural development only. And
for
what they
funding
do is
NGO?
they give grants to the NGOs for women development, for watershed development, for farmer producer organization, for they don't give it for education or health. But if it is for livelihood development or for water development, they do it. So I told you that every year, nothing less than 1,000 crores is being given as grants to NGOs all over the country by NABARD.
I think questions are over now. Over to Vince, madam.
Yeah. Madam, you are muted.
Okay, sorry, sir. Thank you, sir. It looks like we have covered all questions. Is there anything else you want to cover before wrap up? I think
What you
no
can do,
question.
madam, is that my phone number and mail ID can be shared with all the people so that in case anybody wants to ask any specific question, they can ask me on my mail ID also and I will explain it on that.
Thank you, sir. So now may I request our Vice Principal, Sri Vinayak Mule sir, to give vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you, madam. Good evening, everyone. Respected dignitaries, students, parents, teachers, professionals gathered here for national level webinar organized by Vidya Vikas Education Society's Vikas College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Department of Political Science and Department of Economics on role of NGOs in socio-economic and political development in India. It gives me immense pleasure to propose a vote of thanks. We feel immeasurable gratification in thanking our patron and founder chairman, Vidya Vikas Education Society, Sri PM Raut sir, for stimulating the wishes and inspiration towards us. Sir, your presence is always a great source of motivation. We honored to have you with us always. We extend sincere thanks to the Secretary, Vidya Vikas Education Society, and Head of the Department, Political Science, Dr. Vinay P. Raut sir, for your valuable guidance and the contribution. Without your supervision and encouragement, we were not able to give our best. Thank you very much for your constant support. We offer sincere thanks to Principal Dr. R.K. Patra sir for your enormous contribution for today's webinar. Undoubtedly, your contribution in today's webinar is unbelievable. Let me express my gratitude towards the distinguished personality and resource person of today's national level webinar, Honorable Professor M.V. Ashok, retired Chief General Manager, NABARD, for giving valuable guidance to us. You have thrown the lights on social, economical, and political aspects very thoroughly. Also shown the limitations of NGOs without any hesitation. We are very much thanking to you that despite of your busy schedule, you have found to grace this occasion. We remain grateful to Vice Principal Professor Shaji Matthew, sir, for caring and supporting us. Your dedication always inspires. We remain very much obliged to Program Coordinator, Professor Ananta Niture, for actively taking interest in making this webinar. We are deeply thankful for the cooperation from our parents and students. Your constant support always helps us to conduct such a webinars. I thankful everyone for putting efforts from planning to success of this webinar. Thank you everyone for your presence and making this webinar a memorable one. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
sir.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I believe in if end is well, everything is well. It's a tradition to end the program with Vande Mataram. So for that, may I request librarian Kulkarni sir to play Vande Mataram. Kulkarni sir, please.
मातरं सुजलां सुफला मलयज शीतला सस्यश्यामला मातरं वन्दे मातरम् शुभ्रज्योत्स्ना पुलकितयामिनी पुल्लकुसुमित द्रुमदलशोभिनी सुहासिनी सुमधुरभाषिणी सुखदां वरदां मातरं वन्दे मातरम् वन्दे मातरम्.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Dear participants, kindly fill up the feedback form for which the link is already posted in the WhatsApp group. Thanks once again.